This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, so we're here with the castle in the background, known as Clifford's Castle, which in 1190 it did not have the name Clifford's Castle. That came a good 100 years later. And about 150 Jews were up here, were locked up in the tower with the surrounding mob, and they were faced with either death in the tower or forced baptism. And they were afraid that if the mob would come in, they would have to suffer the terrible fate of being forcefully baptized. And under the Psak of the great Rishon Rabbeinu Yom Tov Bar Yitzchak, he paskined that they were commanded to commit suicide. And 150 Jews, husbands killed their wives, killed their children, and then the Rav himself came and killed the father of the family, and ultimately he killed himself. And this is a major question in halacha. Is that permitted to do? We know that one has to give up their life not to serve any other deity, not to accept the divinity of any other god. On the other hand, is it permitted to actually commit suicide? We know someone who commits suicide, ein lo chelek la'olam haba. So I want to read to you from a sefer called Sefer HaYuchsin of a great personality, Rabbeinu Avraham Zakuto. Now, who's Rabbeinu Avraham Zakuto? Avraham Zakuto was actually an inventor. Aside from being a great Gaon and Talmud Chacham in the 15th century, he invented the astrolabe, and he actually wrote certain maritime charts that were used by Christopher Columbus in discovering America. In fact, what?
It's a court in progress and they're worried about being heard. So you should move that.
Okay, sure. And Avraham Zakuto wrote certain maritime charts that Christopher Columbus relied on in coming to America. In fact, on one occasion, Christopher Columbus was captured by American native Indians, and they put him in a pot, and they were going to eat him. And Christopher Columbus, he threatened them. He said, if you don't take me out of the pot, I'm going to blot out the light of the moon. Now, how's he going to do that? He remembered from the maritime charts of Avraham Zakuto that he predicted a lunar eclipse for that particular occasion. He said, if you don't take me out of the pot, I'm going to blot the light of the moon. And sure enough, all of a sudden, slowly, the light of the moon begins to dim, and they didn't understand how Christopher Columbus was able to pull off that stunt. They thought he was a god. They released him. They gave him a lot of food, a lot of honor, and they helped him in his mission. You could go to the museum in Portugal today, where you could see the maritime charts of Avraham Zakuto with Hagois of Christopher Columbus. Now, Avraham Zakuto wrote a sefer called Sefer HaYuchsin Haggadah. And in Sefer HaYuchsin Haggadah, he speaks about throughout history, many Jews have committed suicide not to have to be forcibly baptized. Is this permitted? He says not only is it mutter, it's a davar kadosh. And he brings three primary proofs. Number one, from the Gemara in Gittin on Daf Nun Zayin. The Gemara tells us about boys and girls who are being taken on a ship back to Rome to be molested. And the girls said that better that they should remain in their purity, and they jumped off the boat and they committed suicide. And then the boys made a kal v'chomer. If for the girls that it would have been natural, they committed suicide. For us, that it would be unnatural, certainly we should commit suicide. And they darshan the following pasuk: Hashem mi bashan ashiv, ashiv mi mitzulas yam. Which means that even if a body sinks to the bottom of the sea and it's ripped apart by sharks and its molecules are decomposed and scattered to the far ends of the world, God one day will resurrect these kedoshim and they'll bring them back to life. So that's an example where even to avoid being abused, one is permitted to commit suicide. The greatest raya, Rabbi Avraham Zakuto says, is from the Gemara in Ksubas Andaf Kuf Gimel Amud Beis. We know on the day that Rabbi passed away, a bas called out, anyone who is at the funeral of Rabbi is mezuman l'chaya olam haba. And there was a certain launderer, not a money launderer, an actual somebody who did laundry, right? And he was not present at the levaya of Rabbi, and he was very upset that he missed out. So he went up to the top of the roof in Sar, and he jumped off the roof, and a baskol cried out, that launder is also mezuman l'chaye ha'olam haba. So we see that under certain very extreme circumstances, it's permitted to commit suicide. In fact, and this I was not aware of, Rav Avram Zakuta records that Rabbeinu Yehuda, the grandson of the Rosh, and Rabbeinu Yehuda's mother-in-law, the wife of the Baal HaTurim, they committed suicide in 1391 to avoid being baptized in the terrible decrees of 1391. I was not aware that the wife of the Baal HaTurim committed suicide so as not to have to convert to Christianity. So this was an age-old Jewish practice going back to Shaul HaMelech. Shaul HaMelech also committed suicide, not to be violated and embarrassed by the Arelim. Who else? Shimshon HaGibar. Shimshon HaGibar also, he had a haftacha that he would still go to Olam Haba. So, under rare circumstances, that which the Torah forbids is actually admirable. Says Rabbi Zakuta, where is it merumaz? Ach es dimchem lenafshosechem edroish. I will seek your blood from your own hands. But ach is a miot, that under limited circumstances, not only is it permitted, it is admirable. And here, the Rav of the city, Rav Yomtov bar Rav Yitzchak, he encouraged his followers to do that which the Torah normally forbids, but for them this was a great act of Kiddush Hashem. You know the song, Yivada Bagoyim?
Sure.
Yeah. Yivada Bagoyim. You can get it on there. Hikmas dam avodecha shavach yivada bagoyim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.